Good morning. It's 9:30 here, and we've already given it just a little bit of time to hopping on, but we'll give it another minute, let some people join. You have joined our HiNotes webinar. My name's Athena Caballero. I'm the HR Consulting Manager with Higher Level. We are a woman-owned human capital management company. Today, we're actually discussing diversity recruiting and second chance hiring in 2022. I'm joined by Brandy Yonka. Just want to do a couple housekeeping items here. So a few things before we begin. This call will last approximately 60 minutes and will be recorded. You are currently set up in the listen-only mode, but there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation. During the presentation, questions can be posed through the webinar via the messaging function on this go-to little control panel. And at the end, I will open up the mic to answer those questions, or if Brandy can jump in. So like I mentioned, joined by Brandy Yonka today. Thank you, Brandy. Brandy is the Executive Vice President for the nonprofit organization Connections to Success, whose mission is to inspire families to realize their dreams and achieve economic independence by providing hope, resources, and a plan. Brandy joined Connections to Success in 2004, holding positions as a resource manager, regional program director, regional executive director, and vice president of programs for the organization. In 2021, Brandy was appointed to lead the organization across all locations and initiatives, providing executive level leadership. Prior to joining Connections to Success, Brandy worked in corrections and adolescent substance abuse treatment programs, sparking her desire to work closer with families struggling with generational cycles of poverty, incarceration, substance abuse, and violence. Brandy holds a bachelor's degree in administration of justice and sociology from the University of Wyoming and a Master of Public Affairs degree from Park University. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Brandy. And again, thank you, Brandy, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to discuss a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and apologies to everyone who is joining us today. I'm having a little technical difficulty, so my camera is off. I promise I am presentable, but I needed to turn the camera off to make sure we stayed connected today. Again, I'm Brandy, and I've been with Connections to Success since 2004 and have seen so many remarkable success stories of the men and women that we've worked with, and that, their transformations. And knowing employment is a critical piece to reducing recidivism, the rate at which people return to incarceration, and breaking that generational cycle. So I will walk through a presentation today, a little bit about who we are, just to give some context about Connections and how we do this work. I'll talk about some of the ways in which employers can increase their second chance hiring programs and initiatives, and some things to consider if you're not already doing that, and how to work with organizations like Connections. So I'll walk through this piece, and then joining me today, and I will introduce him as we move throughout the time together, is Michael Eanes. And Michael has been with Connections for a couple of years as a peer support specialist, and he has some practical lived experience and professional experience that he is eager to share with you too, on why hiring is important and tantamount and can help your businesses grow, but also to help break that generational cycle. So that's just kind of a big picture overview of where we're going today. So as you can see, this is just our cover page. These are participants at our programs. We do a lot of pre-release work with men and women before they leave incarceration. So a couple of these pictures are our next step celebrations, which I'll share a little bit about. But these are all participants that are working with Connections to Success and are They're all out now. A couple of these pictures were taken prior to their release from incarceration back into the community, but they're all out now and doing well. So that's just a little bit about who you're seeing on this first page. And all right, hold on. Whoops. I already pushed the wrong button here, guys. Sorry about this. So, all right. I'm going to ask really fast. Athena, I need to advance this. I'm trying to figure out if I hit enter, the little chat bar shows up here.
If you're in PowerPoint mode, you might be able to just either hit your forward like arrow button to go to your next slide, or you might have to hit escape out of it and then you can reopen your slide from where you're at.
I ran through this morning too, and I was doing just fine. So my apologies. There we go. Okay. Sorry, technology has been my challenge this morning. So a little bit about connections to success. Our vision is to be the leader in empowering individuals in their transformation to economic independence. And how we do that is through our mission. And we inspire individuals and families actually to realize their dreams and achieve economic independence by providing hope, resources, and a plan. So our model is very comprehensive at Connections to Success to get to that economic independence. And we know from experience and just from that practical work with our participants and our own life experiences that getting to economic independence takes some time. So we're really committed to our participants and our employer partners for the long haul. So just again, high level at Connections to Success, although we're talking a lot about second chance hiring today, not everyone we serve has been incarcerated, but typically those that walk through our doors fall somewhere within this cycle. And it's kind of a crude way of calling it out, this poverty and crime cycle, but it's a good illustration of individuals who we serve that perhaps have grown up in generational poverty, have a record of unemployment and incarceration. They may have received government assistance. They have gaps in education and skills training, and oftentimes isolation and depression sets in. We really have taken a good look at how to fill the education and skills gap in really modifying our curriculum and our training that we do to make sure that it is relevant and understandable for everyone that we serve. So when someone comes to us, they go through what we call this transition cycle. Our participants complete a workforce readiness training, and it's more than that, though. It's a personal and professional development training. It really starts honing in on some cognitive restructuring. So often those that we serve are given and told stories about who they are, but it's not really who they are at the core. So we spend a lot of time even helping them identify their skills and their gifts and what they bring to the workforce. That's really important, that they can see they have skills training or they've had this experience that is actually a benefit for the workforce. And then we get into those tactile skills of mock interviews and resumes and those types of pieces as well. We will work with our participants to get them connected to education and skills training. We all know, and I know you all know too, like that's key to hitting economic independence. But it's very individualized and looking at what someone wants to do versus this prescriptive, like this is how you have to do it. We may have individuals that want to get a CDL, and so we'll work to find providers that do that and get them connected, or someone who wants customer service training. So it's very much an individualized process. And even working with the employer partners that we work with to find out what their requirements are so we can start getting our participants on that pathway for success. We work with employers. Our offices, we have direct service sites in the St. Louis region, the Kansas City region, central Missouri, and southeast Kansas. And then we partner with organizations throughout the country. So we work with employers in all of those regions to identify opportunities for our participants, but more importantly, to identify qualified candidates for the employers. And then we have life transformation coaches. A lot of people and organizations refer to that as case management, but this is really about helping individuals identify the pathway to reaching their own individual goals and coaching them through this process. And at the core of everything that we do is mentoring. So mentoring is a really important piece that's done by staff, that's done by volunteers, just to walk beside someone as they're making their way back into the workforce, to have that additional support. And as I go on, I'll share this right now too. We've had a lot of employers that said, you know what, we really will partner and work with connections, but we want to know that who we're hiring has a mentor. So we know they have a lifeline outside of here. That's been a really key piece for us. That mentoring is just so important to doing life together, to being an additional support system outside of who our participants may or may not have in their lives. And our goal is to get them to economic independence, that they're working and employed at a living wage, that they've gone back to school and they've gotten some job skills training. They may have gotten higher education. In some cases, they may have needed to get their GED or HiSET, and we help with that. Independence and mobility, where they're able to move about their community, and then connecting back with their family and giving back. So I think this is really where we work to get our participants to, and we see this happen and come to fruition in so many ways, as far as individuals who are even have been through connections that are now in an employment situation or calling and are hiring our participants, and that's a way of giving back. They may themselves become mentors, or they may get involved in other community organizations. This is really the quick high-level pathway on how we work with the families in our programs. So the challenge right now with employment that's hitting all of us employers, including Connections to Success, is getting talent. 47 million people quit their jobs during the Great Resignation. That's just baffling. We're all experiencing this, where people have left to start a new adventure, to just make a complete change. But that's really been a challenge for companies. And many of you, and including Connections, we've tried some different strategies to fill these open positions. I've seen things from, obviously increased wages, but, more vacation time, to lessening some of the requirements that perhaps were barriers before to employment. But we're still all in this challenge of getting those jobs filled. And interestingly enough, I was doing my research and getting some updated statistics for today. Is that through a survey that was done recently, 5% of managers and only 3% of HR professionals stated that they actively are recruiting those with criminal records. And this is this huge untapped workforce of individuals who have a criminal record, maybe have recently been released from prison, or maybe they've been out for a while, or maybe they're on probation and they've not gone to prison, but they've been automatically eliminated from the hiring process. And even more is there's significant racial disparity on hiring. So those who have a criminal record, after an interview, 17% of Caucasians get called back, while only 5% of African Americans get called back. So we know there's a huge disparity. We know that this is an overlooked workforce, but we also know through our own practical experience and through some other research, that individuals who have been incarcerated who have a criminal record are great employees. They have so much to bring to your organization. But we need to start relaxing our own policies as employers on how we hire and how we do things differently. So the benefits of hiring someone with a criminal history, there's obviously, as I said, it's going to help address the labor shortage. It will help to increase diversity. You saw that statistic before of only 5% of African Americans are called back if they have a criminal history after an interview. And then from an altruistic or, philanthropy type of attitude, then you're providing a second chance. But what that's doing, some people are like, well, you know what, we have a business case and we need to focus there. Absolutely. But providing a second chance to someone provides a second chance for their family, provides a second chance for their kids, or maybe a first chance, right? So we can break that cycle for that generational cycle of poverty and incarceration. We know that employers that train or offer ongoing education are key. 43% of individuals who participate in training, they're less likely to recidivate and they're more likely to remain employed. That's significant. So that training that can be offered, if it's, a structured training, if it's more on-the-job training with someone, is key because it's helping them advance their job skills. article I found talks about higher productivity. So, and this is interesting, and we think that 1 to 1.5% more productive, maybe that isn't significant, but if that was across all of our companies, we could increase our overall profits by millions by individuals that are more productive and showing up to work and getting their work done on time. And then life experiences lead to higher engagement. The individuals that we serve and that maybe have been incarcerated oftentimes come with certificates and additional training that they received while they were in prison. There's a stigma out there about what prison is versus what it really is. There's a lot of job skills training for certifications that happen for men and women who are incarcerated, and they're coming out with some very significant skills that we can't afford to continue to overlook. And oftentimes they have more creative problem-solving skills. If someone, they might think a little differently on how to approach the situation at work. And then there's lower turnover costs. And really, this is where working with community-based organizations like Connections to Success is key, where if there is something that crops up, if someone is, having a challenge getting to work on time for a couple of days and it's noticed, we encourage the employers that we partner with to call us. Let's troubleshoot this now. Let's because we want to keep our participants employed. We want to keep your turnover costs lower. That's really key. But statistically, we've also seen that individuals are less likely to quit their jobs, and that's really important. So, working with organizations like Connections is very critical, as well as you're starting out on this hiring process. So what do we do? I think we need to start challenging the process. And I have anecdotal story after anecdotal story, which I won't share today, of people, though, that were ready to be hired by their local hiring managers, and then the insurance company came back or someone higher than them said no. So, first of all, we need to really start thinking about why. Why is this, and what can we start doing? How do we challenge the process? I know that we've got individuals who are on today from many different states, and I can't speak to each individual state's ban-the-box requirements, but that's the first step right there, is to comply with any ban-the-box requirements you may have in your state. That means you just simply can't ask it on the application. However, employers can still run background checks during the hiring process and still use those to not hire someone. So even complying with those requirements, but taking it a step further to develop that fair and compliant background screening process. So it's very clearly written on, those convictions that you may or may not accept. If there's a business reason that you can't accept a certain conviction, I think it's good to know that, because when we hear case by case, that's really hard to understand what those cases are that are acceptable and they aren't. So having something very clearly written is important, and important for everyone to understand. And then to ensure that your background checks comply with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Obviously, probably everyone here does this, but you obtain written permission to run the background check on someone. And you need to let them know what it will be used for, how it could be used. And I found this really interesting, and something I think often overlooked, and even from an organization like ours, to really start educating our participants is, the candidate needs to be allowed to challenge the findings that are on the background check and to present any proof of positive change. Give them an opportunity to share this is why, but also give them that opportunity to challenge the process. And I know we have a couple of employers who have walked us through this, and we've been successful with that, but across the board, can we take a bigger picture look at how someone's been doing since they've been out of incarceration? What have they been doing? That's really important to really understand that as you're going through this hiring process. And then again, it's kind of like having that fair and consistent background screening process. Have that assessment process done as you're hiring individuals, and if they're maybe providing back feedback, that you can say, yes, this is really falls within that consistent policy that we've written, but this is someone that we will hire. And then incorporating DEI in the recruitment process. That's really important, for you're even including looking at how hiring individuals with a criminal background help with DEI hiring initiatives. And Michael's going to talk a little bit more about that as we go here shortly. But oftentimes when we think about DEI, we don't consider people who have been incarcerated fall into the DEI category, but they often do. So he's going to share more about that. And include the hiring of the reentry population in your recruitment strategies. Have a focus group, or talk to individuals who have been incarcerated, who have a criminal record, to find out what their challenges were, what could have made a difference. Have them involved in that hiring process, and helping develop policies and helping to identify candidates is really key. So one of the things that we do at Connections, as I've shared, is really engaging employers. And so as we're working with employers, we will identify ourselves, like what are the skills gaps across industries. We partner with local one-stop centers. But more importantly, our team is talking with employers about what they need and want. What do they need in those candidates? So we can even start doing some pre-screening of those individuals before we send them. And really, it's important that organizations like ourselves build relationships with employers, but also very important that employers are reaching out to community-based organizations. Oftentimes I've heard, well, we don't know where to begin. We don't know where to begin to start second chance hiring initiatives. Find your organizations in your communities, if it's your local one-stops, if it's organizations like Connections to Success. There are so many great organizations out there doing similar work to ours that have a pool of candidates that would be fantastic for you. So, both ways. We build relationships with employers, but please find those organizations in your own communities and reach out to them for additional support for that pool of candidates that you're looking for. I think it's just been incredible, the outreach that I've seen happen both from employers to us, and then our team's done out to employers to build some relationships with some really large companies. We have a job developer who really is on our team that helps, identify participants and make those good matches. And again, it's not an implied hire. I shouldn't say again, I haven't mentioned this, but where we're sending people and then the employers need to interview them and pick them, but helping us to screen, come in and do mock interviews. Perhaps you're not ready to make that shift yet as far as we're going to change our entire hiring policy. Find organizations and do mock interviews. Get to know the participants that they're serving. It's a good way to kind of try it out, and you may surprise yourself and hire someone on the spot from that. So this is just, again, I kind of circle back to some of what we do at Connections. Our personal and professional development training is tantamount to all that we do. But we take participants on tours and provide that experiential learning. So perhaps as you're looking for organizations in your communities that do similar work to Connections, you may even want to offer a tour of your company. We've had employers who have hosted field trips to see what the work is like before, even starting the interview process. Because in some cases in manufacturing, we may have a participant like, I can't stand for this many hours. They may not have a noted disability, but it's something they know that they can't do. But then they walk through and they can see, like, this is what the job entails, so they can get a feel for that too. So host those opportunities to see what you do in your industries. We work to do career assessments. We work with the My Next Move, the ONET, the self-directed search, to help our participants identify what their skills are and helping to get those connected. So you might even say, like, this is what we're looking for. If you're familiar with ONET online, you may say, these are the skills we're looking for, and that helps us screen as well. We do a life plan with SMART goals, and that one of those is employment and education, which is what we're talking about today. We also focus on parenting and relationship skills. And then just another piece that we do that, again, is just ideas for you as you're thinking about ways to engage, is we have ongoing groups that meet weekly where we talk about financial literacy or parenting, or provide GED classes and mentoring. And it's another way for employers to get involved and to learn more about great candidates in their communities. So I kind of circled back to what we do, but again, just trying to provide some ideas as employers on, yeah, we want to change our second chance hiring policies. We don't know how, we're not sure where to begin, and we just want to get a better comfort level. Find opportunities like these in your community and connect with those organizations. So again, I talked about, this is feedback from an employer that came and provided mock interviews, and just the enthusiasm that they saw from the participants that we serve, and that they're ready to be hired and to go to work. And then this is just some of our outcomes. We're proud of our job placement rate, and our recidivism rate we know has dropped significantly. So I won't read all of these to you, but we're proud of that. Actually, it's a little bit higher right now, so we're excited to see that our participants are getting to work. So what I'm going to do now, and this is my information, and then Michael, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Eanes, and he will share some of his own experiences from transitioning from incarceration back into the community, the work that he's doing with employers in his community as well. And I think you're just going to love to hear from him. So Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. My name is Michael Eanes. I'm a peer support specialist for Connections to Success in mid-Missouri. I'm located in Columbia. And I was just listening to the numbers and the statistics, and all those are beautiful, right? But it's the day-to-day work, and when you see people's lives start to improve as a result of embracing different thinking, as a result of education, as a result of training, when you start to see people believe in themselves, that's when you get the real reward and know that you're doing the work in the community to be able to impact generational cycles in a positive way. So Brandy mentioned, I just want to just tell you a little bit about my story. And inside of my story is the numbers that she talked about and the lessons and benefits that I've had. Most of them really are connected to Connections to Success and various other things. So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I grew up poor. So when we talk about those cycles of poverty, I was a victim of that. Made some bad choices, was influenced by some things in my community that poverty made me want to seek a way out. And so with that, I started to sell drugs, involved in petty crime. I ended up receiving a 30-year sentence and started my prison term in 1995 for the illegal distribution and manufacturing of controlled substances. I actually did 23 and a half years for selling drugs. So as I made it through prison, I was about, I think maybe about a month prior to my release. Now, keep in mind, I've done all these classes in prison. And this lady said, well, we have a personal and professional development class that's about to happen here. And we wanted to know if you wanted to be a part of it. And at first I was like, I don't want to take any more classes. I've done 20 some odd years worth of classes. So I took the class. It was one of the best decisions that I made in my life. I was part of Connections to Success's inaugural class in the Missouri Department of Corrections. So I had a couple of things that I thought that I had worked out prior to my release because I knew I had to have employment. I knew I wanted to be happy and I wanted to be productive in the community. But a couple of things stayed in the back of my mind and I was never able to successfully reconcile how I would deal with them. One of them was the felony question. I knew that felons were discriminated against, and I knew that no matter how well I presented, no matter what credentials I had, no matter what certificates that offered proofs of rehabilitation I had, I still had that black cloud of being a convicted felon hanging over my head, and I didn't know how I was going to navigate that. Connections to Success equipped me with the skills to be able to not only navigate it, but navigate it in a way where I could talk about how those poor choices led to healthier choices that allowed me to get better education and better training. And another thing, that 23 and a half year work history gap. And so when you don't want to really deal with, or you try to avoid the felony question, because you know that there are stigmas attached to us and people tend to, an interview can be going great. And then when you run into that felony question, it takes the wind out of your sails and you feel deflated and you feel like you've reached a point where, like, no matter how well it went, you're not going to get the job. That coupled with the 23-year gap in my work history, that was a problem for me. So Connections to Success is so creative and innovative. They were telling me, well, like, did you work in prison? And I was like, yes, everybody in prison works. So you don't have a work history gap, right? If you drove a forklift in a prison warehouse, you can drive a forklift out of here. So I learned that I didn't have a gap in my work history. I had some valuable skills that I had learned in prison that were actually transferable and able to be utilized on the street. So when I came home, I had the support of Connections to Success. I had the support of my family. However, I knew that I had the stigma of being a convicted felon attached to me, and that prevented me from being able to advance in a lot of ways. I went and got some training to become a certified peer specialist. And my first job was I worked in a behavioral health clinic. And so I started to learn more about generational cycles as we're talking about. So one of the things that I learned about with generational cycles of poverty, there are also generational cycles of trauma that accompany that. In most cases, poverty is a form of trauma. And so as I started to learn more and more, I incorporated it, and it started to help me heal and move past some stuff. But I stayed in contact with Connections to Success because I'm part of the family. I was first part of the family as a participant. So later on, they circled around and hired me to do peer work. With the new skills that I learned related to trauma and other things, I was able to understand where my participants were coming from on a different level because I'm a convicted felon. So a lot of the barriers that they ran into, I knew were going to be a problem. And so as Brandy mentioned, I've done a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion presentations. And diversity, equity, and inclusion today looks like, okay, I'm going to lower the barriers or ultimately remove the barriers that allows a minority person to get a supervisory position in my company. DEI is about so much more than that. The DEI population, the marginalized population that I work with are convicted felons. Most of these guys and most of these women come back into this society after having suffered the punitive consequences of their action. They want to come back and they want to be good fathers, brothers, husbands, sons, daughters, wives, mothers, and sisters, but they have that stigma attached to them. I've had people on my caseload who have worked at jobs and being productive for months on end, and then the background check comes back and they're set back to zero. People who have done 20, 25 years in prison and are still being judged by poor choices that they made 2 decades ago. And so that becomes a problem because what happens is if we do not ultimately lower and ultimately remove these barriers, when you have people who want to come back, re-entering citizens from incarceration, and they want to do good, but we have these barriers and these obstacles, sooner or later, it creates frustration. That frustration makes people revert back to their survival skills. And if we as a community and a society are not willing to give people an opportunity to re-enter and have access to things that improves the quality of their lives, then what happens is once that frustration and stress starts to set in and they believe that they are not capable of advancing in a lawful way, then they revert back to what they know. And nobody is safe. No property is safe, no lives are safe, because a society has set up barriers for people who have paid their debt, but they still have the stigma attached to them that puts them in the marginalized population category where they're discriminated against. And so I've also had people on my caseload, so just starting with my story or going back to my story, one of the things that I often use and I tell people that I'm proud of, I'm 51 years old. I became a father a couple of years ago. I have my first child. Connections to Success has hired me. I work pretty good. I like to think I do. But I have a college fund set up for my daughter, and I have a life insurance policy where she's the primary beneficiary. Nobody had that for me. Nobody had that for me. So through the things that I've learned, through wanting to do better, through being an advocate to help lower barriers and busting through some barriers myself, I would like to think I've been able to break a cycle of generational poverty and trauma. My daughter is set up in a way that I was not set up. And so most people who go to prison, they have an opportunity to evaluate their lives. Most people want to come out and they want to do good, but society still attaches that stigma to them. And so when you have these barriers set up in your way and it prevents your forward mobility, this is a form of oppression in a lot of ways. And so again, if society is not willing, this is a community issue. This is not just Connections to Success. This is not partners. This is not just the responsibility of reentry organizations. This is a community issue. It is in the best interest of the community to make sure returning citizens who have paid their debt to society have the least amount of barriers that they have to overcome in order to start being productive. Most people want to be peaceful. They want to be productive. And they want to have a sense of security for themselves and for their children. And so it's in the best interest of everybody that we remove these things. So I just want to talk about a couple of success stories on my case load. So I have a guy that was instrumental. So MFA Oil hired him as the last convicted felon to work in their gas stations. Originally, he was the last convicted felon. He came in with such a strong work ethic. Within 2 months, they asked him to be the manager at another store. And then he opened up the doorway for other convicted felons to be able to be hired. But that's just one of his claims to fame. The other claim to fame is that he was instrumental in getting Missouri legislation, law changed so that convicted felons could now sell lottery tickets, because they sell lottery tickets at gas stations. And so he was instrumental in that. And so when given an opportunity to do the right thing, not only do we come out and are we productive, a lot of times we can lead the charge in trying to transform some things that opens up the pathway to our peers to have peaceful and productive and secure lives. Another guy who was on my caseload, and this was an eye-opener for me, and it made me rethink some things, and because this is a constant learning process. So I had a guy, he took our personal and professional development class, and we always asked him, what is your dream job? He said aviation mechanics. Now in my mind, I'm saying, okay, man, you got a lot of felonies. It's unlikely that you will become an aviation mechanic. He's at State Tech in Lynn right now taking aviation mechanics, and he has an opportunity opening up for him at Boeing and McDonnell Douglas, a couple of other opportunities that he has available. And it just blew my mind. So I realized that I had some things in my way that I had to move to. And so that helped me rethink some things. So I'm saying that if we give people opportunities, most people will take those opportunities with the right guidance, with the right support. And not only will they survive, they will thrive. Everybody who is on my participant caseload, with the exception of a couple of people, those who are active, are actually thriving. They're gainfully employed. They're taking care of their children. They have stable housing. They have stable transportation, but they have been able to overcome a lot of these barriers. A lot of people don't have that opportunity. And so when we do not remove these barriers, it does nobody any good, because people who have paid their debts to society should have an opportunity, and it should be on a case-by-case basis, because some people come out from prison and they have no intention of trying to do the right thing. But that's not the majority. The majority, if given the opportunity, will take advantage of that opportunity, and they will thrive, and they will break cycles of poverty and trauma. And that's what we have to do. We have to educate them. So a couple of things that I've learned from the PPD class since I've been home, I pointed out the two things that really impacted me and helped me at first. But what I realized is, as a certified peer specialist, we help people who struggle with substance use disorder and mental health too. What I realized about trauma is the earliest forms of trauma that most people experience is language. Harmful language from somebody that they love, and that starts to impact their self-worth and their confidence. And if you don't believe that you're capable of achieving a thing, you can't even summon the internal energy toward putting the effort towards doing that thing. We have a part of our class that's asks us to tell us about your best moment, your proudest moment. And so what happens is people tell us about their proudest moment, and their peers pull out of that, right, the positive qualities that they exhibited in that moment. And so if the earliest forms of trauma that we experience come in the form of harmful language from the people we trust, then when your peers pull up out of your story those positive things, and we repeat them, and we affirm ourselves as a result of them, and we do gratitude every day, we are actually starting to chip away at some of the earliest forms of trauma that we have experienced. And so when we do that, we start to restore the confidence. And when you start to restore the confidence and the belief in the self, that gears you up toward taking the training, believing in the power of it, living the lifestyle, being receptive to the information and the mentoring, and then that creates the potential for success. And so connections to success, this is what we do. And I have been blessed too, as a result of my own personal story. I'm on the state advisory board for the Missouri Department of Mental Health. I'm on the Missouri Telehealth Extension for Community Healthcare Outcomes Network for the Peer Specialist. I'm on a DOC Prison Research Innovation Network board. So I do a lot, and a lot of our people do a lot. Given the opportunity to thrive, most people will take that, and they will try to break these generational cycles of poverty and trauma. We need to lower and ultimately remove a lot of these barriers that stand in the way. And if we look around, especially come on up here to Columbia and see my caseload and watch my guys thriving. So if we move these obstacles and we provide the best supports, then I believe that this workforce, we can tap into this workforce, and everybody can benefit in a positive way, and we can break those generational cycles of poverty and trauma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. I always love hearing your story. I've heard it many times, but it always gets me charged up and ready to go. So I guess we have about 15 or so minutes left if we want to open it up for questions and answers at this point.
Absolutely. It doesn't look like anyone's dropped anything in the chat. I know you both gave a fundamental amount of information. I'm gonna, leave it up here for a moment and see if anyone does have any questions that they'd like to drop in the chat. April is actually Second Chance Employment Month, so I'm really excited that we got to have both Brandy and Michael speak about connections to success and what their organization does. Really valuable content. Thank you both. Michael, especially your personal spin and experience, really valuable, I think, and impactful to the conversation today. I still don't see.
And I would say, too, for anyone who's listening, there's a great book that I have read that's got a lot of practical advice and data and research, and it's called Untapped Talent, and it's written by Jeffrey, and I never can say his last name right, Korzanik, but he's with Fifth Third Bank, and he definitely is, he speaks nationally about second chance hiring, and his book is a great resource, and it's where I pulled some of my information from, as well as other sources, but definitely check out his book, Untapped Talent. That really will also help guide employers through this process.
Yeah, thank you. So if you didn't hear that, Untapped Talent, that is a book. You said it was the Fifth Third Bank employee that wrote that.
Jeffrey, yes, and his last name, I'm going to spell it, is Korzenik.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Korzanik,
yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah, I think so. Korzanik. So
Yes.
just he's done a wealth of research on this, and has got some great information out there as well.
Great. No, I'm definitely going to check that out myself. Really, again, great. Oh, did you have something to say, Michael?
Yes, I wanted to encourage people. So as we move forward in our efforts for DEI, to diversify, to make spaces equitable and be inclusive. I want to encourage people to start thinking about putting convicted felons who have re-entered society and who have exhibited proofs of consistent rehabilitation. I want to encourage them to start incorporating those that population, which I'm a part of, in that DEI discussion.
Absolutely.
We need to start incorporating them, because you have people who have done the work, who've paid their debt to society, and who are not only surviving but are thriving out here, like thriving. So I'm proud of my guys and my ladies up here in mid-Missouri. Like, we are out here doing our thing. So and then I'm just blessed to be able to model what it looks like to a degree. So that's important too. That's where the mentoring piece comes in. So you model what it looks like. So I'm a certified peer specialist and a peer support specialist. That's my title. But I do a lot of work. I do a lot of work because of the lived experience and the shared experience with people and the barriers that they face. So it's more than just a job to me. It's a personal passion, and I have an emotional connection to that. So I have a vested interest. So as people move forward with their DEI ideas, please think about including marginalized populations that include convicted felons.
Absolutely. Here at Higher Level, it is very dear to our hearts, Second Chance program. We work with employers that support that, as well as our candidates, and really try to find permanent placement for them. So again, really close to our hearts here at Higher Level as well. Did either of you have any other additional information to add?
I guess just the common theme that I had throughout too was find organizations in your communities that do this work, and get to know them, and to learn how organizations walk beside individuals through this transition. It's a great partnership, and oftentimes we're all a great starting point on where to find a really great workforce. And it goes both ways. Like I said, we reach out to employers on a very regular basis, But, those employers call and, we're hiring, that's key. And there's so many organizations around the country that do this important work who are connected under the linkage into this workforce, but, is easy to access. So I would just say, this is a starting point to find organizations in your communities and partner with them to really develop a second chance hiring program. We've done that here in our Kansas City region with a couple of employers where we really have a model program going. So I think it's just being willing to have those conversations and see what type of creative ways in which you can, engage this workforce. So I think that's important. Like I said, there's field trips. We've had employers who have actually done a small training for participants to see, like, a paid training to have them come in for 15 hours to see, like, is this a job I'm interested in? Is it a good fit? So there's all kinds of ways to start this process. So, there's some great overarching guidelines, but I would say get creative and help it fit your needs and that of your local workforce.
Absolutely.
I think that would be my parting advice.
No, absolutely. I think one of your slides, you talked about the great resignation. Here at Higher Level, we're calling it the great engagement, but really, and then you referred to this book, but as untapped talent in this, marginalized sector of our workforce really is an untapped, candidate pool. And right now, companies are really struggling to find employees. I think this, again, is just really, really valid and timely and important for our viewers, for ourselves, to really fundamentally change our way of thinking. So again, thank you.
One last thing, I do want to send a shout out to I want to just briefly talk about like connections to success. So when we talk about minimum wage versus living wage, man, they pay me pretty good. I'm a big felon, so they pay me pretty good. I'm able to take care of my daughter. I have my own place. I got reliable transportation. And one of the things that I love about connections to success is sometimes you have people who hire convicted felons, but they stay at a base position. They never reach a supervisory position, or they never operate in leadership roles. Connections to success trusts the leadership skills and capabilities of the people that they hire. So I have companies that try to hire me all the time, but I'm definitely not leaving connections. Not at all, because it's more than just a job. It's like a family thing to me, because I started off as a participant and they circled back around and hired me, and I love doing the job. This is my passion. I love doing it, and I love working on the preventive end also, though. But yeah, we definitely it's a great company. They provide a great service to the community, especially so I work in Columbia, Missouri, and we have so many participants who are successful. And it's great to be able to watch people's lives take a turn for the better versus a turn for the worse. You see the joy start to appear in people's lives, especially when they're able to unite with their children, when they're able to provide them with Christmas gifts. All of those little bitty things, having job skills and access to employment that pays you a living wage, that type of stuff transforms lives. It produces great healing, and it breaks the cycles of poverty and trauma.
Absolutely. Yeah, here at Higher Level, we like to talk about that. And it sounds like, your organization is providing a hand up, not a hand out. So I think that's another really, important thing to think about, is that what you're providing are the tools, for people to actually be where they want to be and break that cycle. So.
Yeah.
Well, again, my appreciation to both Brandy and Michael for joining us today, giving us, real examples, Michael, and of course, just what your organization does and the value that it provides. So again, thank you. And my appreciation as well to all that attended. This does conclude our HiNotes presentation. I would love to speak with you further regarding your 2022 hiring needs, DEI statement. Of course, Brandy and Michael's contact information is on the screen as well. You can reach me at 618-993-8836 or acaballero@higherlevel.com, or just go to our website, www.higherlevel.com. Our next webinar will be on Wednesday, May 25th at 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time with guest Carrie Burchill. She is the North Star coaching consultant, and the topic will be crucial conversations. I do hope that you'll join us for that HiNotes webinar. Again, thanks to all that attended, and thanks again, Brandy and Michael. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.